Welcome to the ABC Podcast.
Always be cool.
The show where your hosts, DC and BK, showcase your local business and real estate pros going gangbusters in leadership, community involvement, and just being cool.
Here are your hosts, serial entrepreneurs, mortgage experts at Summit Lending, and partners in crime, Darren Copeland and Bobby Kerr.
All right, everybody, this is the Always Be Cool podcast, ABC, hanging out with your hosts, Bobby Kerr, Darren Copeland.
What's up, everybody?
And our great friend, phenomenal coach, player, Mr. Jamie Quirk.
Here we go. So I'll do the usual. I'll start off with the intro here. So Jamie Quirk, born October 22nd, 1954 in Whittier, California, was a parade All-American quarterback at St. Paul High School in Santa Fe Springs, California. After high school, was offered a 4-year football scholarship at Notre Dame, which is pretty awesome. Yeah. First-round draft pick by the Royals in 1972. Played Major League Baseball from 1975 to 1992. Wow. Was a member of the 1985 World Series team for the Kansas City Royals, and also was in the 1980 AL Championship team for the Royals as well. His coaching career started in 1994 with the Royals and had stops in Texas, Colorado, Houston, Chicago Cubs. Also was a minor league manager for the Padres and Kansas City. Wife Anna of 40 years, which is amazing. 3 kids, 4 grandkids. Also a member of the Missouri Sports Hall of Fame. One awesome guy all around. Jamie Quirk, welcome to the show, man. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. You read that just like I wrote it.
Exactly.
Did we miss any big highlights?
Yeah, did we miss anything?
No.
Yeah,
it was perfect.
Covered it pretty good. So tell us, how was that? So obviously you were an awesome athlete in high school, very accomplished. I mean, Notre Dame's not chasing down just anyone, right? So how was that? Was that a tough choice coming out, whether baseball or
was.
football?
I really think, growing up, of course, you played Little League, and that was my first love was baseball. But I went to a high school that was very prominent in football, and that was the big thing.
Right.
And I started getting recruited by a lot of schools. I'm Catholic. I went always through Catholic school, so Notre Dame was always like
that was it.
That was it.
Right.
I was thinking no, and then they were recruiting me, but there were quite few schools recruiting me too. Then it became, the more schools talk to you, they got good programs too and beautiful campuses. And then my mind started getting clouded a little bit. and then when it came time to sign it was back to Notre Dame. But then baseball happened. All of a sudden the draft comes. I really never knew how good I was in baseball. I'm playing it, your high school baseball, you get 12 people at your games and they're all mom and dads.
Right.
That's right.
Exactly.
And I played at a high school that would get 15,000 at our football games.
Wow.
Okay.
So that was kind of swaying me,
Sure.
but I always had the love for baseball. And then when the Royals did draft me, they were worried that I might not sign because of the football thing.
Sure.
And they took a chance, which I'm glad they did, because back then in 72, they were only 4 years old. We were basically an expansion team still.
Right.
Yeah,
so
that's right.
It was a good time to be a Kansas City Royal because you're going to get an opportunity. And I decided, after talking to my parents and everything, we just said baseball is the way to go. And luckily it turned out good.
Right.
You were drafted by the Royals prior to George.
No, it was 1 year after.
1 year after George.
He was 71.
Okay. Right.
I was 72.
That's right.
We knew each other in high school only as opponents. We never were friends until we both ended up here in the minor leagues together.
Yeah. And what year did Duke?
Duke was 71 also.
Man.
Yeah.
So I mean, you guys have been tight for years and years then.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, Duke, I can remember when all his kids with Dina, we all know Dina, and Dusty was a coach for the Philadelphia Phillies. I remember him as infants, running around the locker room and all that. So.
Right. So cool. you guys remember each other before the families even started.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Right. So, we were going to ask you some questions about those running around days before family, but
maybe
we'll do that, off air or something like that. But I'm sure you guys had some pretty good times running around together back in the day.
Oh, we did. Yeah. It was a different time then, we didn't have cell phones and it was just, the 70s and 80s were, I wouldn't change a thing. I mean, today's player make a lot more money than we did, but I don't think they had the fun that we did.
Well, I specifically remember, we had the great opportunity to be on your guys' team last year for fantasy camp, right?
Yep.
And we go to your guys' favorite Mexican restaurant there in Surprise, Arizona. And I remember you, George, and Duke telling some really cool stories about you guys coming up through the minors and different things like that. So, I mean, that friendship, that'd be like Bobby and I coming up through the minors together. I mean, that would just be totally epic.
Well, there's so many of us in that era of the 80s with the Royals and late 70s have made it Kansas City as home.
Right.
Yeah. A lot of the guys were just married, having kids, and they settled here more so than any other era of Royal players. Not many of them live here. They might have a home, but then the season's over, they leave.
Right.
We made it home.
Yep.
And I married a girl from here and been here ever since.
So I legit had this conversation with someone last night at dinner about your era of player, especially for the Royals. And I'm going through the list in my head, just from the World Series team, those early 80s. And I'm going through the list of who the people that I know still live in town. So this is exactly what I was talking about last night. And Willie,
he was here until
he was
recently.
here for a long time, but now he's in Surprise, right? Still close to the Royals, tied to the Royals. But I'm going through all those guys like George and Freddie Patek and you. And
rest of soul, Paul Splittorff really was one of the first ones to get us all living here. Housing was very affordable and all that. And Dennis Leonard's lived here forever.
Yeah, I was talking about Leo because I talked to him yesterday.
Lived here forever. Next week. Frank White, of course, is from here, but there's that whole lot of those guys on that team made it home.
Well, yeah, I remember, back in the 70s and 80s, it was the thing, it seemed like everyone lived in Blue Springs, right? Yeah. Everyone was out, over in that direction. Right. Which is really cool because you had a few, stops along your career, but to come back to Kansas City and make it home.
We always made it home. Yeah. Even with the other teams that I played for, we never left. This was always our home base. But obviously, my wife's from here. She had 3 sisters and her mom. So,
she's not going anywhere.
She's not going anywhere, and we weren't going to move anywhere.
That's fantastic.
We went other places that you mentioned I played at we rented, and then when the kids got in school, you're not going to pull them out of school, then they got a little older and they're into baseball and doing their thing. So this was always home.
So that's an interesting segue. So you're talking about going other places and renting in those places, but Kansas City's always home base. I mean, you were a bit of a journeyman.
Yeah.
Like today I'm looking at everything and recapping and studying, right, on Jamie Quirk. You're kind of like the Ryan Fitzpatrick of the NFL, to where you played for a really long time. You got the opportunity to play for some great teams, so much so that, and such a great teammate, that you were brought back, several different stints, right?
I remember when I first got traded from the Royals to the Milwaukee Brewers, it breaks your heart, that first trade.
Right.
I was right after my rookie year, and we were just starting to be good, the Royals. First time we went to the playoffs.
Right.
And it breaks your heart. And a year later, I get traded back. And now I'm going, this is great, I'm back.
Right. Because that was actually interesting. So as we were doing our research, I forgot that you were it was a blockbuster trade at the time.
Yes.
You go to Milwaukee, and then the Royals get back Darryl Porter, who caught here for a number of years, and pitcher Jim Colburn.
Yep.
Right. So
no-hitter here.
So, that had to be, kind of an eye-opener because there's a human element, right? It's not just a ball player. You got families and friends involved. So you've got your buddies that you came up through the minors with.
Sure.
You see what's happening in Kansas City. And then I'm sure it was really cool to be like, all right, I'm going back to Kansas City now.
Oh, when I was with the Brewers, like I said, I was there a little over a year, and then I get come into the office. We got to talk to you. We've just traded you back to Kansas City, and I go, first guy I called George, and hey, I just got. And he goes, I know, I heard. I was waiting for you to call.
That's awesome.
But it was great. It was like I'd never left. It was so quick.
That's awesome.
And that stint, you stayed for a while.
Then I stayed, that was 78. So then I was there through 82. Then I went to the Cardinals
Right.
because Whitey was the manager there. I was a free agent.
Right.
Really didn't want to leave, but got a chance
Right.
to get a 2-year contract. And
you knew Whitey.
And I knew Whitey,
Yeah.
and I knew, St. Louis was just coming off a World Series. They're
hot.
a great
Mhm.
baseball
That's
city,
right. Right.
And it wasn't far, and my wife could come back and forth, and think. So I went to St. Louis for 2 years, and then the 83, 84, and then 85. Luckily, I'm back again.
Right.
Timing was perfect.
Timing was everything.
That's pretty cool.
Hey, so speaking of timing, so I know there's a lot of stories that we're going to touch on, but tell people, during, I think it was 1984, and I remember you talking about this at dinner down in Surprise, but tell everyone, because I think a lot of people forget about this, but you had a very short stint in Cleveland, but it actually really helped out the Royals. So touch base on that for a second.
84 was a weird year. I'll start from the beginning of 84. I'm with the Cardinals, go to spring training. It was my second year there. At the end of spring, Whitey calls me and he says, Jamie, we have roster problems. We're going to release you, but we want to keep you. And I'm trying to figure this out. Okay.
You're breaking
confused.
up with me, but you still want me.
So Whitey said, Darryl was the catcher and their backup catcher. They weren't sure of, but they wanted to give him a shot because, but we're going to put you on the coaching staff so we don't lose you. And I said, well, what does that mean, Whitey? He says, you're going to do everything as a player. You just can't play in the game. But this could change at any time, you know? So, okay, I'm still getting paid. Everything's, normal. Well, then my agent calls me about a month into the season. I'm still a coach for the Cardinals.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, do you still want to play? And I go, yeah. I'm keeping in shape, trying to. And he goes, well, the White Sox have called. Do you have any interest in going? You're going to have to go to AAA first, because you haven't played since spring training. Long story short, so I signed, go with the White Sox to Denver. Their AAA team was in Denver at the time. Play there for about a month, get called up to the White Sox, play there a month. They send me back to Denver, and then the minor league season's over. And they don't call me up. So I come home here to Kansas City. There's still about 3 weeks left in the major league season. Mm-hmm. And I'm sitting at home thinking, well, I've got work to do. I got to make some phone calls when the season's over. I've got to get a job.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Well, in the meantime, Paul Splittorff has a retirement party. He was retiring, and get an invite to come to the retirement party. Well, it just so happened that afternoon, Cleveland had called and said, Jamie, we'd like to purchase your contract. And I'm thinking, okay, for next year, there's only like a week left in the season.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And they go, no, we would need you here tomorrow in Cleveland. I go, okay.
All right. Okay, let's go.
So they had 4 games. Cleveland had 4 games left with the Minnesota Twins, who were battling the Royals. They were like neck and neck, like a game separated them.
Right. For the division before all the wild cards and all
yes,
this.
it was
right?
just
Right.
before the
ALS,
division.
yeah.
Yes.
So, kiddingly, I tell a lot of the guys at Split's retirement thing, hey, we're playing. I just got signed by the Indians. I'm going to go there. We're playing the Twins. I can help you guys get into the playoffs.
So you're
Just
giving him a hard time, right?
Just kiddingly, thinking, how am I going to help them get into the playoffs, right?
Yeah.
Well, it turns out I go to Cleveland. I play. I'm not even starting the game. They pinch run for the catcher in the top of the 9th inning. I go in and catch the bottom of the 9th, and I'm the third hitter.
Okay.
First 2 guys make it out. The game it's tie game 3-3. I hit a walk-off homer to beat Minnesota, and it put them 2 out with 3 to go. So I'm basically kind of clinched for.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, it wasn't mathematically they had a chance, but it really hurt Minnesota's chance.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And so that was my claim to fame. I had 1 at bat for the Cleveland Indians, hit a home run, and never played for them again.
And help
That's
the Royals.
amazing.
And
That's
then,
amazing.
And then that was 84, and then the Royals said, hey, we better get this guy back. Over the winter, I signed back.
So after that game and you hit the walk-off homer, were you calling George and your other buddies saying, hey, man, you're welcome. You're welcome. Right? Because this is before social media and even texting, right?
Yeah.
Cell phones, yeah.
It was an off day for the Royals. They were flying to Oakland. but Minnesota was playing us. So they had that not extra game, but in the schedule, there wasn't an off day for them.
Right.
So Royals are all listening to the game.
Wow.
They're picking it up. Hey, what is Minnesota doing? They weren't caring what Jamie Quirk's doing.
Right. They're scoreboard watching.
And then all of a sudden they go, oh, Jamie's up, and it happened. And it was before cell phones, but I got a heck of a lot of phone calls in my hotel room.
I bet.
So,
that's epic.
Speaking of your career and that little stint as like a quasi mid-season coach, right? You've been a catcher, you've been a utility player, you've basically played everything besides pitcher.
Pitcher and center fielder, the only two positions I've never played in a major league game.
That's incredible.
That's amazing.
So obviously the opinion of Jamie Quirk with other coaches, other players throughout the course of your career, the opinion of you has been very, very high. Your peers, your coaches, to make you a coach, especially when you were a player. What was it, or when was it that you realized that you did want to be a coach? You had a skill set to lead other people. Just tell us a little bit about that.
As I got older, like in my late 30s, I knew my career was going to be coming to an end. I played till I was 38. I knew that I wanted to stay in the game. And how was my first manager was Whittier. And my last manager was Tony La Russa. So I had a very good bookend. And I got a lot of knowledge from both. And then late in my career, talking to Tony, he said, and he just says, Jamie, you're perfect for it. You've played a lot of positions. You know so many different things about the game. Mm-hmm. You were a hitter, so you know hitting. You were a catcher, so you know pitching. So it just started. Now my mind's thinking, and luck. You got to have luck too.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. So my career ends in '92, and of course you want to play forever, but you can't.
Mm-hmm.
And Hal McRae was managing the Royals at the time, so I actually went to spring training. My last 4 years I played was in Oakland, but then I went to spring training in 1993 with Cincinnati, still trying to hang on. Thought I could. I went to spring training, and it's funny. I could tell my skills were just they weren't there, and they had a young catcher that I could tell they wanted to keep. So I remember going in at it was St. Patrick's Day. And I went into the GM, and Tony Perez was the manager.
Oh, yeah.
And I said, guys, I'm not going to retire because I respect the game so much. I said to him, great players retire. The rest of us just go away.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I know I can't play anymore. And, but thanks for the opportunity. And I left. Well, they were in Plant City back then. The Reds were. The Royals were in Haines City. We used to call it Baseball City.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Half hour down the road. So before I left Florida, I went over there and talked to Hal and to say, I know it's too late to be a coach this year. This season is going to start in 2 weeks. But I just said, Hal, here, I have interest in staying in the game. I'm going back to Kansas City. Is there anything that I could do to keep in the game? He goes, don't come opening day because it's chaos. Come into my office the second day and we'll talk. So I go home. Second day I go in and Hal says, yes, I'd love you're right fresh out of the game. You can help McFarland and Brent Maine with your knowledge.
Right.
He goes, I can't promise you any money, but I'll talk to the GM, which was Herc Robinson at the time. And I said, hey, I just want to get my foot in the door.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
He goes, so it started out, I would come in home games and I would meet with the two catchers. We'd go over opposing lineups, because I was American League guy.
Right.
I knew the American League like the back of my hand, how to pitch everybody. And McFarland and Maine loved what we were doing. Hal loved what we were doing. So eventually I did a little more. And then Hal comes to me and says, would you mind traveling if I can get Herc to pay you a little money? I go, yeah. That's what I'm doing this for.
Right.
So the whole second half of the season, I was basically a coach without being a coach. And then that winter, he named me to the coaching staff full time.
Wow. That's fantastic.
That's how that all happened.
And it's just one of your friends. One of your buddies that you.
One of my teammates that was managing. And he knew what I was like as a player, and he thought I could help, and
absolutely
worked out great.
So do you still have a decent relationship with McFarland? Because obviously he comes to the fantasy camps and stuff too. So
yeah,
that's a really cool story.
That is a great story.
Yeah, right.
So along those same lines, being catchers, right? You obviously helping Brent Maine and McFarland. Over the last 100 years in Major League Baseball, over 22% of all managers were catchers in the major leagues, right? Can you maybe explain a little bit why you think that is and why catchers translate so well to be leaders of a team?
Well, I think a lot of it is they, as you're playing and you're a catcher, you are so involved with the pitching staff. And as you know, in baseball, pitching is 90% of the game, and getting along with him, when to pull a pitcher, when he's done, you just grow with that as a catcher, and it helps you a lot because you're managing 15, 16 guys every day. And then you also have you were a hitter, so the offensive side too. So you mesh with everybody. The catcher can get along with hitters, he can get along with pitchers. They're always in the middle of everything. And I think, and we're always looking this way. Everybody else is looking that way. We're seeing everything.
That's a great point.
And it just fits. That's, I think, why a lot of the catchers have become managers. And if they're not managers, a lot of them are coaches.
Sure. Isn't that a crazy stat?
Oh, my gosh.
And that's just the managers. That's not including all coaches. That's just 22% of the managers are all catchers.
Yeah.
Like, that's mind-blowing stuff.
Yeah.
Right. Well, when you come down to managing the pitching staff, which is huge, right?
Right.
And relating to both sides.
That's
totally makes sense.
True. That's 90% of managing is managing your pitching staff.
Yeah.
And that's what a catcher does every day.
So speaking of managing, because one of my questions here for you is to ask you, who was one of your favorite managers going through? And you had some really awesome bookends, right? So let's start with that, because I want to touch base on who your favorite manager was, but then also talk a little bit about in the 90s, because you were on a real amazing team with the A's and the Bash Brothers. I mean, that was like an all-star studded team back in the 90s. So let's start first with the manager. Who was your favorite going back in the day?
I talked about Whitey already, and he was probably my favorite because he was my first. And Whitey was so friendly. He was a player's manager where he'd play cards with you. You'd go hunting with him in the off season. He was just one of those guys, loved him. But he was perfect for me at that time. As I got my last manager with Tony La Russa, and then I'll fill in between, Tony was perfect at that time because Tony was very serious, no fooling around. He was just so wound,
all
business. And that was perfect for that time of my career because I'd been through all the other stuff, so I could read through that. Rookies did not like Tony because he was too intense and they were intimidated. But I'd been there and done that, so that didn't bother me the way he was.
Right.
In between had Dick Hauser. Dick was totally different than both of them. He kind of stayed out of the clubhouse. He was very businesslike. He made out a lineup. He wasn't one to chit chat with you much, but we loved him. Great guy, but in a different way. He was X's and O's and but he never would buddy with you or have a drink with you or anything like that.
Right.
We'd get on a plane. He'd stay up front. A lot of managers would walk up and down and check out everything, but Dick was just, that's the way he was.
Right.
Didn't mean we didn't like him. It just
different style.
Different style.
Yeah.
But those are the ones that meant the most to me or at that particular time in my career. Because like I said, when I got brought back to the Royals in 85, Dick was our manager. And Dick didn't know me when I was here the first time. He wasn't here. And he gave me an opportunity, by bringing me back, giving me a fresh start, and all that. And so I always appreciate that from Dick.
That's fantastic.
So to follow up on DC's part of his other question, so rounding out your career in Oakland, I want to throw out a couple names here. 1990, Mark McGuire, Jose Canseco, Ricky Henderson, Dave Stewart, Dennis Eckersley, Bob Welch, Walt Weiss, Terry Steinbach, Dave Henderson, Mike Bordick, Willie Randolph, Willie McGee.
Unbelievable.
What?
Team.
Unbelievable.
So
superstars, all Hall of Famers, all over the place.
I mean, all-stars, Hall of Famers.
Yeah.
That's where you
Right.
get to round out your career to be around, obviously, baseball greatness. We don't personally know these guys as humans, so maybe talk a little bit about this. DC and I call it, seasons of your life.
Yeah.
In the season of your life of ending your baseball career, being around that much talent and that much personality.
That's where Tony La Russa earned his money. I mean, dealing with Jose and Ricky every day.
Mm.
Ricky, you never knew if he was going to play, but you knew he was going to play, but he acted like he wasn't. We'd waiting for a lineup, and Tony would always say, "Well, I got to wait on Ricky."
Because he'd want you to say, "Ricky, come on, we need you."
Exactly.
Yeah, we need you, buddy.
Come on, yeah.
Was he like nursing an injury or something?
His legs,
He was always running and sliding, so he could always nurse
Sure.
something.
He just wanted the
Ricky
attention.
being
He
Ricky,
wanted
yeah.
the attention. Come on, Ricky. And I lockered next to Ricky for 4 years.
Wow.
And this is the honest God truth. There were days you'd sit down and your lockers, you're this close to a guy, for
We're
4
this
years.
close.
Yeah. There were days, I don't think he knew my name. That's just the way Ricky was.
That's amazing.
I'm sure you've heard some of the stories about Ricky. When he signed with the A's, Charlie Finley gave him $100,000 bonus or something. And about 4 months after he signs, Charlie Finley goes to him and say, "Ricky, would you sign the check? You're screwing up my books."
Oh, he didn't cash it.
No. He goes, "No." And Ricky always talked third person,
Right.
And Ricky go, "Hey, Ricky, put it on the wall. I frame it and put it on the wall." He goes, "That's fine, but cash
Still
it."
cash it.
Get it through after it runs
Oh,
through the bank.
gosh.
Yeah.
That's
Oh,
amazing. So he
but
was a trip then.
He was a trip.
Oh,
Well,
my gosh.
I want you to maybe dig a little bit deeper because you said something at the very beginning of your answer about that's how Tony La Russa made his money, right? So as a leadership standpoint, when you've got to manage and lead all kinds of personalities, whether it's a company or a baseball team or a little league team, right? There's a lesson to be learned here. So maybe talk a little bit more about how Tony earned his money managing that many personalities.
Coming up forever, you always hear managers say, "Hey, we got these rules and they're for everybody, and this is how we're going to do it." La Russa was so different. He'd say to me, "Jamie, I try to treat everybody fair, but obviously I'm going to treat Ricky Henderson and Jose Canseco different than I'm going to treat you." And I understood that. As a player, I get that.
Mm-hmm.
They're on a different level,
Right.
and he's going to make sure that he's going to do everything to get them in the lineup, to get them ready to go. He's got to baby them. He knew he didn't have to do that with me. But he says, "I don't expect you to treat me the same way. These guys are our bread and butter."
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So what you're saying is there's no blanket approach to leading people.
There isn't.
Right.
There isn't. There's many different ways,
Right. Well, I think the key to a strong leader is finding out how to coach individual and their personalities and what egos they have to rub, what other egos you don't have
egos.
to. And
Tony
coach them up.
Tony knew how to deal with. He goes, "We got a 25-man roster. I've got 25 separate rules, but I have to blanket. I can't let it get out of control."
Right.
And he didn't, but he knew how to handle Canseco, and he knew how to handle, Ricky, and Eckersley had a big ego, I mean, there were guys with huge egos that he had to keep under control.
Gosh.
Well, and you guys actually made it to the World Series in 1990, right?
I went to 2 World Series with him in '89.
Yeah.
We won it was the earthquake.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep.
And which was kind of anticlimactic. We were ecstatic. We won, but it was with the damage and the earthquake in San Francisco because we were playing the Giants.
Yeah.
And we're both Bay Area teams.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody took it pretty personal and all the damage in the Bay Area.
Mm-hmm.
And, we were shut down for like 10 days. People forget that,
Right.
But we still won a world championship and it was great. And then the next year we were
The Reds.
by far the best team. We'd won 107 games. We swept the Red Sox in the playoffs. And then we get swept in the World Series. But we didn't play good. and everything the Reds did was perfect. And
They could do no wrong.
yeah,
That's
and
baseball,
we lost.
right?
You know?
Because was it game 4 you started?
Yeah, game 4.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
Yep, we lost 2-1, and they clinched it against us. But it was. We had great teams, and
Oh my gosh.
Just the players, and it was a great organization back then. Nothing like, I mean, we packed it. Nothing like Oakland is now.
Right.
It's kind of a sad
Sure.
place, and they need a new stadium and everything.
Right.
But back then it was
that team,
superstar after superstar.
Well, and you know, mid to late 70s with the Royals, mid 80s. I mean, you were on some fantastic teams.
Yes.
And a lot of great talent surrounded around you.
Yeah, I came up in 75 in September, and I would say the Royals from 75 to really about 88, we were either winning our division or going down to the last week.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're good.
Right.
Real quick before we get off the Oakland A's tour, any other little stories that maybe you could share about the personalities, because that team, right? I'll say that team over those course of the years, like you said, they packed the stadium, but it didn't matter if you lived in the Bay Area, if you lived in Blue Springs, Missouri, like a little kid growing up in Blue Springs, Missouri, like I'm watching the A's. I'm watching caricatures.
Yes.
Right.
Ricky Henderson, Jose Canseco, Mark McGuire. Now, obviously, we know how the story has played out, but those were like superheroes.
Yes.
So, any other
They
stories
were.
you can tell about?
Well, you know, the Bash Brothers, that became very famous, and that was cool. And, you know, they started it with, we'd come around third, you hit the third base coach, and then, you know, McGuire and Canseco started, but then everybody, if you hit a home run, everybody had to do it, you know. We had Bobby Welch. Get this, 1990 spring training was a lockout, kind of like last year was in Major League Baseball. Mm-hmm. So we started late, and we had a sped up spring training. Bobby's last game, the pitchers had to get their innings in, you know. So we're playing the last game of spring training against Cleveland and Phoenix, and Bobby's getting lit up. I mean, he gave up like 12 runs in an inning and a third. But he had to keep pitching. He had to build his arm up,
right?
You know, and so Bobby's going, and you got to know Bobby. He's one of my most favorite teammates ever. Reformed alcoholic, just had a personality that was unbelievable. Loved everybody. He was a team guy. He's going, I can't believe it. I stink. I am gonna,
I'm done.
I'm done. I'm 35 years old. I'm. This is killing me. He goes out and wins 27 games.
He won Cy Young. Did he win Cy Young that year?
Yes.
Yeah,
Cy Young
that's
won
right.
20. Last guy, no one's ever won 27 cents.
That's crazy.
You know, that's how crazy baseball can be.
Yeah, because one day you're on top of the world, and the other day you're like, I can't play anymore.
Yeah.
And another story about, before we move on,
please.
Dennis Eckersley, you know, one of the best closers in the game.
Mm-hmm.
He was scared to death every time he took them out. He had this
Really?
persona with the long hair, and, you know, but that was, you would ask him, he'd tell you right now, that was all an act because I wanted to make them think I was not nervous.
Wow.
Right.
But that's how he pitched, you know. He
No
was like,
kidding.
God, and he would come up, you know, he was one of the first pitches strike you out and go, you know, like that.
Gun it down.
But it was all to build himself up.
Well, think about how many
Right.
people do that in everyday life. So take that example of Dennis Eckersley on the mound, the long hair, the mustache, the gun you down salute, right? So take that into social media today.
Yeah.
Somebody portrays themselves as all their life, all their shit's put together.
It's all,
Right?
It was all a facade
it's
to
all
get
facade.
him ready to pitch the ninth inning.
Well, it's like our three buddy, Les Norman. We reference him a lot because he's such a great guy.
That's awesome.
And he gave us a quote, and he said, behind every face is a drama unfolding.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter if you're Dennis Eckersley getting ready to take the mound as an all-star.
Yeah.
He's nervous as hell.
Oh, yeah.
And he needs to mask it a little bit just to amp himself up.
Well, it just shows that at the end of the day, everyone's human, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And, you know, whether it's social media or you're a professional sports player, you know, everyone puts on the best version of themselves, right?
That was his cape. That was like Superman,
Yeah.
you know.
That's a good way to put it.
You know, and that's what he had to do that to succeed.
And isn't that amazing?
It is, and as great as he
Perennial
was.
all-star, just amazing closer.
But those are the things as a teammate you see behind the scenes that no one else sees. You know, he would sit back then. You know, I'm pretty sure it's the same day. The closers would stay in the clubhouse till like the 5th inning. You know, because he's not going to be used, and he'd be getting his arm rubbed. He'd be in there smoking cigarettes, and he's a nervous wreck. You know, you know. And then the 6th inning, he'd come in the dugout, and then he'd wander down to the bullpen and get ready to pitch the ninth.
Wow, that's cool. Thanks for sharing that. That's really
we
cool.
love hearing stories like that.
A lot of people appreciate that one for sure. How about let's talk about another story with you. So your coaching career, you've made your stop in Chicago, right? And this one's a little quote unquote famous, but you're bench coach in Chicago, and you're John at Bo Porter on the Nationals.
Yep.
And I'll let you tell the story if I'm setting it up. You're in the dugout. You're John at Bo Porter, who's coaching third base. He starts to walk towards you. Go.
Okay, it was the 4th game of a series, and we weren't very good. The Cubs were not very good, and they had kicked our butts for 3 straight days. I mean, like 14-2, 12-1, and you know they had a good team, and they'd hit probably 15 home runs in 3 days.
So you guys are just over it, right?
So now and we're just like, and now it's the 4th game. It's the 6th inning, and it's 7-0. They're winning, and it's a 3-0 count on Jason Worth.
Okay.
Well, you've heard about unwritten rules in baseball.
Sure.
You know, they're kicking our ass. Jason Worth swings 3-0 and almost falls down. I mean, like
he's trying to hit it.
He's trying to hit one out of the stadium.
Oh my God!
He's trying to hit an 7-run home run.
Right. And I lost it. And I'm going, play the game the right way. I'm screaming at Bo Porter. I can't scream at their dugout. It's too far away. So I picked the closest guy. You know,
I'm going to pick the only one that can hear me.
And I'm going, God, yeah, play the game right. You know, teach these guys how to. You don't swing 3-0 when you're killing. You know, they've beaten. You know, the unwritten rule thing. Yeah. You know, and I just couldn't stop. You know, and then he's going, "You talking to me?"
Here we go.
And I go, "Yeah, you're the closest one to me." You know, and I'm. You know, so he starts coming over, and I'm thinking, and I know I can't leave the dugout.
Right.
You know, I mean, I could, but you're
then you're done.
Then you're done.
Yeah.
You know, so I go to the top step, and he gets closer and closer and closer, and now it's almost like I can grab you now. You're coming into my dugout. You know, but and a lot of people didn't really know what was going on. Like,
sure,
what is happening here?
Right? Why is there a fight?
I mean, our dugout knew because you know I'm like protecting our guys.
Sure.
You know,
that's
they're not playing the game the right way.
Right.
You know, yeah, beat our ass. Go home, and we'll go put our tail between our legs and get out of here.
Right.
But don't embarrass us. That's what I'm trying to say. And we're going like that. And then next thing you know, he's by our dugout, like right here, and we're John. And now the Nationals dugout, it's like, what's going on? And they all come running over. So now we got a little, nothing's happened yet. You know, just blah, blah, blah. And then, okay, go back. Well, it's like the next inning, we hit a guy not on purpose.
Okay.
But they didn't think it was not on purpose.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. And now our catcher at the time, you know, was a young kid, but he was fiery, you know, and he starts John at the hitter. And now we've got a full on
bullpens.
Now it's on
everything. Well, they finally get it broken up. Jerry Lane, who is still an umpire today, Jerry gets our managers together and he goes, Quirk's gone. I go, well, if you're going to throw him out, why didn't you throw him out the first time? Well, he incited this whole thing, you know.
He started it.
And so then I go and give my piece to them. And I, very calmly, I'm going, Jerry, you know, come on, it was over. I didn't have anything to do with it. No, with Jamie, if you didn't do that, it wouldn't have happened. And he's right, you know.
But you can't agree with him. I mean, you got to fight it a little bit.
So long story short, it was just I was protecting our players about playing the game right, and I boiled over and got a little too excited.
Well, number one, Bo should have been out too. I mean, he left his post. See,
that's what we argued.
You can't leave.
That's what we argued when Jerry threw me out. I go, why isn't Bo going? He left and came. I never left my post.
Right.
and he didn't really have a good reason, but he just said, Jamie, just leave it alone. You started it, you're gone.
So, all of our friends, John Mayberry, he's the king of storytelling, right?
Oh, yeah.
So he likes to talk about different melees and fights. And, back in the day, I know there was one that he was involved with in Texas. But
yes,
was there any
there.
Were you there? Was there any other like melees that you'd like to share that were just kind of, not humorous at the time, but some melees that really went down?
Well, there was another one I caused. I'm playing in Oakland.
Another one I caused.
There we go.
And I was sitting behind McGuire. Canseco went deep. McGuire went deep, and now I'm up. We're playing the Boston Red Sox in Oakland.
This wasn't the AL championship?
No,
okay.
It was regular season game. So I'm thinking he's either going to hit me or throw close to me, and I'm ready for it. So I'm in my stance, and I'm not ready to hit. I'm ready to get out of the way.
Mm-hmm.
But
defensive stance.
I know baseball, that's the way. You hit me, and I'll go to first base. That's just the way we did it back then. But I'm watching his eyes, and he's looking, and the ball came here.
Oh, he's looking at your head.
Yeah.
Oh, jeez.
And I go back, and then he could have hit me anywhere else. I wouldn't have minded. But when I saw it here, I go out, and big brawl starts then. I'm thinking, how you see nowadays,
right?
Who
was pitching?
His name was Dobson, big, huge guy. He had a pretty good career. But that was the only thing I said that made me mad was don't go here.
For the head.
Sure. Hit me here. But when I could see his eyes, and they were glued right here,
straight up. Now, when you ran out, he didn't like Nolan Ryan you like Robin Ventura, did he?
No.
Did you actually get to him?
I got to him, and then the catcher got on me, and it became a wrestling match and all that. But
so actually, this is an interesting topic of conversation. So when that does happen, and it always, of course, makes news, and that's what people like to see. It's like a hockey game. Like everyone wants to see the fight. But when it happens in baseball, do players really want to get after it? Or is it like we're just going out here because we have to? And if we don't, then we're the a-holes.
It's usually between two guys, maybe three. But the rest of the guys have to go out there.
Are there conversations happening like, Jamie, let's just act like we're having a fight here and let's just wrestle a little bit?
Absolutely.
Oh,
yeah. Let's go over here. Let's go over here.
I'm going to hold you, and I'm going to buy you beer later, okay? But just struggle a little bit.
Well, it's funny. You always see the bullpens come running out. And a lot of times the bullpens might be right next to each other. And we always would say, well, why don't you guys just stay out there and fight? Why run all the way in and then you're tired?
Too much effort.
Yeah. And then by the time you get there, it's over. Just the two bullpens just go in the one bullpen, and we always would tease about that.
The closer fights the closer, the setup guy.
Yeah,
right. I always wondered though, in one of those melees. So let's say the catcher catches you from behind, and you're on the bottom of the pile. Like, does that hurt with like 10 or 12 guys on top of you?
Yeah,
it
depends on how you're laying, and you get smothered. You get a little claustrophobic down there.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like, God, get off me. That's when you see, they start pulling guys off because they know down in the bottom, it gets a little scary.
Yeah, exactly.
Speaking of this topic, so I saw a video of you. I don't know the year. I think it was probably 90-ish because you were on the A's and you were up against Nolan Ryan.
Yeah.
And we all know that he was kind of the enforcer of pace of play.
Mm-hmm.
He hated batters.
He hated waiting.
He hated waiting, and he would let you know either verbally or by throwing at you. And there was a video of you're probably antagonizing him a little bit, to be honest.
I saw that because my son showed it to me.
Oh, okay.
Dad, you got to see this. It was just recently. I don't know where they got it on YouTube.
Yeah, I saw it on YouTube. Yeah,
and what people don't realize, I was catching, and I was leading off the inning. So you go in, you got to take off your gear, get a drink. It's in Texas. It's 1,000 degrees. So I'm the first guy up. So I come up, and I'm kind of like taking my time, just catching my breath. And Nolan's out there like, come on,
let's go.
So finally, I get ready, and first pitch is like, he didn't want to hit me, but he wanted to get real close to me. And it was like,
he wanted to get your attention, didn't he?
Oh, he got it, And then I kind of smiled, and I go, yeah, I know I took my time, but you got to understand the situation. I just caught.
Right.
I'm trying to catch my breath here. Give me a second,
Yeah.
But he was like that, like, come on, let's go. I'm
go.
ready.
So that brings up a great question. So let's say a fastball from Nolan Ryan. Does that coming in close and personal, does that ball just sound different coming in compared to other pitchers?
It has a different sound to it.
Yeah.
And then especially his curveball was so tight, you could hear it going.
A curveball.
Yeah, a curveball. That's how hard he threw it. But yeah, you could hear the ball come off his fingers.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Wow. –
Unbelievable.
So bring it back to your coaching career. When you were well, first of all, did you ever have the opportunity to coach or manage players that you played with? Kind of like
coached, yes.
Yeah, so very
Kinda
similar
like
to
John
what John Wathan
Yeah.
or Hal McRae, like having to manage guys. So maybe talk a little bit about that experience of being someone's peer, and then later on you're their leader.
Well, it goes back to my first job with McFarland. I played with Mac.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I got hurt when Mac was in AAA, and when they put me on the disabled list, he got brought up for his first time.
Oh, wow.
Me being hurt got him to the big leagues, from AAA. Then when I got healthy, he went back because, he was younger then.
Right.
But then I ended up coaching him,
Mm-hmm.
and
like 94, 95-ish. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
right. And then going back to that, I think the hardest thing, and I don't know, have you ever had Duke on the show, and did he talk?
Oh, yeah.
I think the hardest thing, Duke, I don't know if he ever said it or would admit it, when he got the manager's job here, there was like 8 of us that were 2 days ago were teammates, and now he's our manager. That was really hard on him. It was hard on us.
Sure.
Because you went from teammate to manager, but I know it was really hard on him having to.
Well, didn't he come to you guys?
Yeah, he brought us all in, the veteran guys.
Yeah.
Just said, hey, I need your help. This is very, very awkward. I don't know if it's really ever happened.
Right. Because he was only a manager for what, like a month in Omaha?
Yes.
And then they brought him down.
Boom, right? Then he's up, and here he is. Half the team is his ex-teammates.
So did he bring you guys all like into a room together, or did he hit you up individually and say, hey, listen, I know I was your teammate, we're friends, but I need you guys to support me as the manager?
Yeah, he brought us in the manager's office. There was like 8 of us, and talked about, hey, I just like you said, I need your help. Mm-hmm. I need your respect.
Mm-hmm.
It's just this is all of a sudden now, because it has manager by my name, things are different.
Right.
I've got to treat you a little differently. I can't be your buddy, and Duke and I were as close as can be.
Exactly.
And we still were, but we couldn't act like it anymore.
Right. So you had to do it for the rest of the clubhouse, right?
Yeah.
So the other 24, 25 guys.
So we're talking about Duke's point of view, right? And you said to lead that it was hard on you as well as players. So maybe speak about, I know you, like, okay, cool, we can't have beers in the clubhouse together, whatever it is.
Right.
So what was that mental traction like to kind of come to grips with the fact that, okay, well, this has been my teammate for so long, and now he's essentially my boss?
Right. It was just, first of all, you respected him. Mm-hmm. It wasn't like a guy that became your boss, and it wasn't like a friendship. Right. Hey, we're behind you. Don't worry about anything. We got your back.
Sure.
And so we wanted to make it as easy on him as we could.
Right.
And and I've had that, like when I coached McFarland and some other guys, is same thing. Is they knew me as a person and my work ethic, and they knew how much I wanted to help them. So there was no jealousy. There was no, anything going on, because that's the worst thing you could have. Yeah. Jealousy is a killer.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, and we talk about that, in our companies that we have as well. We talk about having elevator people and basement people, and how you always want to hang around the elevator people. Right. And then like our culture, whether it's, the group of people that we have in business, and the culture in the clubhouse is super critical. Right. Yeah. And it only takes 1 or 2 individuals to be like a cancerous thing. Yeah. Right. So that transcends across all different spectrums of, work and play and things like that. So that's a really good point, because we guard that with everything.
Yes.
Right. Because I'm sure you'd been in some
business
clubhouse.
and everything. It's the same
absolutely.
thing.
I think there are a couple lessons there. One being, even if you're not a leader today, that doesn't mean you're not going to be a leader of people tomorrow or a couple of months from now or a couple of years. So how important is it, to always show up to work or the clubhouse, whatever it is? I'm here to do my job. I'm here to help be a great teammate to my coworkers or, teammate if it actually is a sports team. I think that's number one, the lesson, because if Duke didn't have that respect from you as a player, as a team member,
it would have been chaos.
And there's no way in hell that he could lead you and have the amount of respect. So,
and that all started back in 1971.
Right, absolutely.
When you guys were kids,
so coming up together as minor league 18-year-olds, 18, 19-year-old, come up together to show that, hey, I'm here to be a teammate to you, to earn your respect, give you respect, and then it pays off literally for him, 20 years later when he's managing the team.
Well, it really comes down to, like the ABC rule, like to always be cool. That's why we named our podcast. Just always be cool with people, because you just never know.
It's the old, you're going to meet the same people on the way up as you do on the way down, but you better treat everybody the same.
Better not ever burn a bridge. I think that's kind of the lesson there.
Ever. Sure. We, even on the business side, I tell my 14-year-old son is like, buddy, you're building your database and your friends right now. Yeah. Right. So no matter what business you get in, if you ever sell a house or mortgages or insurance or whatever it is, these people are going to need something one day. So, I'll always be cool. So.
We've actually got a former teammate of yours that's coming on the show tomorrow from the 1980 team, but Mr. Willie Mays Akins.
Oh, great.
Is coming into the show.
What a story he'll have for you.
So, we're pretty excited to speak.
What he's gone through in his life, I admire him.
It's amazing. Have you seen the movie yet?
I haven't.
Yeah.
It's pretty special. I watched it. When George was in last week, George actually called Willie on the show. So we had him on speakerphone and we talked to him. But his story is just so incredible. And you were teammates with him for a few seasons.
Well, I don't think he'd mind me telling the story. It's probably in the movie. Mm-hmm. We were leaving. It was getaway day. We're playing in Texas. Game over, getting on the bus, going to the airport. And Willie's on the bus. He's in front of me. I get behind him, and you always grab a couple beers from the clubhouse on the way to the airport. You take a roadie.
Roadie, exactly. You're not driving. You're fine.
Yeah. So Willie says to me, "Hey, Jamie, when I tell you to go, can you crack your beer?" And I'm going, "Yeah, what's up?" Well, he was going to take a snort, and he always kept this little fingernail long, and I never knew why. And that was the first time I'd ever seen cocaine. And like I said, I don't think you would mind me telling that story.
Right.
And I was going, wow, but that's, that the 80s and, back then it was rampant.
So prominent.
It was rampant.
It's probably the Wild Wild West.
Right? Oh, yeah. And that was the first time I'd ever seen it. But he wanted me to go, while he was,
knock out the sound.
Yeah. But what he's gone through and made it through is incredible.
Yeah, right. It's a special story, and it's his testimony essentially. Yeah. So we're very fortunate to be able to speak with him tomorrow.
Yeah. And George was really proud of him. And George, George is in the movie. There's an actor playing George. But it almost seemed like George just kind of put his arm around him to help him, get back in the organization.
George did. He called Dayton and said, because Dayton didn't know Willie. It was before Dayton. Mm-hmm. And when he got out of jail and get his feet on the ground, he said, we've got to do something for him, give him something to do.
Right.
And it's helped him tremendously.
It's pretty special.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
There was something else I was reading or watching a video. I won't say the player, but speaking of how Coke was running rampant in the 80s and through Major League Baseball. Yeah. A lot of guys were doing it. The stat was like this player who did it a lot said that he thought 45 or 50% of all players in Major League Baseball were actively doing cocaine. Wow. And this one particular player said he kept cocaine in a glass vial about the size of your, top knuckle, pinky knuckle up. And he kept it on a necklace around his neck during the games. And
with his uniform?
Instead of his pocket, because he slid so much all the time.
Oh, my gosh.
That he didn't want to risk breaking the vial and he'd lose his daily.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Crazy. Oh, I'd seen guys come in between at bats, go up in the tunnel, and
right.
It was just normal, you know. That's what you did.
That's just what you did.
That's what he did.
So if that's the 80s, right? Late 80s, early 90s, it turns a little more, instead of Coke, we go to the steroids.
Right.
So,
and the first guy I ever saw do steroids was Canseco.
Okay. I don't think he's going to mind you talking about this either.
He's an avid listener.
Yeah.
I walk into the bathroom in Oakland, go into the bathroom in the locker room, and Hosey's shooting his ass up. And I go, Hosey, what are you doing? He goes, well, I'm on my cycle. I didn't know. I had no idea. I was naive on steroids. Sure. I didn't know what anything about it. And then they supposedly McGuire did. I never saw Mac, so I can't say that. But obviously he admitted, but I never saw him physically do it. But Canseco didn't, he was so crazy. He didn't care if anybody saw him.
Right. Right. And I think, back in the 60s and 70s, what was it, the uppers or something like that? Yeah. So it seems like there was always, there
was something called red juice. They said that Pete used to take, and I don't know if it was actually juice that did so, but it was called red juice.
Interesting.
Right. Well, on a positive note, the clubhouse, because on a very, very small scale, that we go to fantasy camp and we get a week of being around guys and you get really close, and it actually turns into more of, like a fraternity, a brotherhood. And it's not just about baseball. So talk a little bit about that, Jamie. Was that kind of an adjustment towards the end of your career? Like, you're so used to being around your friends and your buddies in the clubhouse. Was that kind of hard getting used to? You didn't have a very long span of time between doing that as a coach, but, was that, kind of difficult to leave as far as being a player on a daily basis in the clubhouse and then
becoming a coach?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, because there's nothing compares to being a player. The adrenaline rush you get, the going out and playing and competing. A coach, your job is to get your guys ready to go play. Yep. And then you just, hopefully they do good, and you've got them prepared and you watch them, because as a player, all you worry about yourself, getting yourself ready to go play. As a coach, you get your guys ready to go play,
right?
And it's a totally different adrenaline rush, which is very small. But when your guys go out and perform, that's our enjoyment.
Sure,
right. Did you ever have an inkling or a thought that maybe you would one day have a chance to either manage in the major leagues or maybe even manage the Royals? Was that ever a possibility that might be?
It was always a dream of mine. That's the one void. I was in baseball 49 years, and if I had one void in it, I wish I would have had a chance to manage a major league team. I had about 4 interviews with other organizations.
Okay.
Never got one. I thought I came closest. I thought I was going to get the Oakland job one year. I can't remember what year it was, but interviewed with Billy Beane and thought I was going to get it. Bob Guerin ended up getting it, who it turns out him and Billy are actually like brother-in-laws.
Oh, were they really?
Yeah. Nepotism going on.
That's kind of hard to compete against their
yikes.
Yeah. And then Billy calls me and says, Jamie, we're going to give the job to Bob. And I was a bench coach here in Kansas City at the time. And he goes, but I'd like to bring you over to be the bench coach to help him. And I go, Billy, no. If you want me to be the manager, yes.
Right.
But I'm going to stay here and be the bench coach. If you want me to have him help me.
Right. Exactly. Yes. I don't want to be second fiddle.
Right. And so that was the closest I got. But I thought there was a chance when Tony Muser, there was rumors that when Tony was going to get fired, my name was being thrown around to take over, but it never transpired. I would have loved to have had it. That was my one void. I wish I managed 10 games here when we had a brawl and Muser got suspended, but it's still not your team. Like Tony, we'd go over the lineup and then Tony really make out the lineup and I'd manage the game, but that's not the same as your team.
Sure.
Right. But you had a really good relationship with those players at that time, right?
Oh,
yeah. So much so that Tony kind of think that you were not doing anything weird, but it seemed like maybe you had a little jealousy of how close in the relationship you had.
I think there was a little bit of that, and Tony and I were close too. But I think there was a little bit of that, and I think there was a little bit of it with Dan Glass, who was not David, the owner, his son.
His son, yeah,
is like he thought maybe I was undermining Tony, which never was.
That's not your personality.
Never, and
because I don't even think Tony thought that.
No,
right,
not at all.
Right,
because who took over for Tony?
Tony got let go, and then there's Tony Pena,
right?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So is there we always like to ask, is there anything that we haven't asked that maybe we should know about Mr. Quirk?
Oh boy.
That you can say on the air.
Well, no, just baseball was my life. I mean, we're talking baseball. I like I said, I was in it from 17 years old to 65 years old.
That's amazing.
Lived, breathed it. My family loved it. It just everything. I owe everything. Like, who was the guy that said baseball has been very, very good to me?
Sammy Sosa.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's me. I mean, everything that I have is because of baseball, and I still love it to this day. I watched I watched everything. I have the MLB network. I'll watch a game all night long.
That's fantastic.
Well, and I mean, you're blessed that you get to watch us play baseball at Fantasy.
Right.
Exactly.
And believe it or not, we have a blast at that.
Yeah, that's what everybody else has said too. That I think it was either Fitzy or Duke that said that they have just as much fun as the players do, because it's that reincarnation of the camaraderie and the drinking in the clubhouse, playing cards, telling stories,
just being the guys.
Well, as you guys know, the week starts off, and then gets going, and now it's for real. Like you get there, and you're kind of thinking, God, I hope I get some hits, or if I'm now as the week goes on, it's about winning the game.
Yeah, now you want to win.
Now you want to win.
Yeah, exactly.
And that builds up, and you can see everybody like
competitive nature.
Totally different later in the week.
Like as a coaches, do you start talking smack in the locker room and saying, "Hey, man, we just totally wiped your team out"? I mean,
no, we let you guys do that.
Okay,
no doubt.
That's awesome. No, that's
cool.
Awesome.
Yeah,
I do got a fun story for you. We'll keep it on the air. So, I play music,
right?
And in one of my bands, our drummer, he texted me this morning and he said, "Hey, I heard that Jamie Quirk's going to be on the podcast today." And I thought that was really cool. They reached out. I said, absolutely. Really great guy. And he said, believe it or not, my younger brother is named after Jamie Quirk. And he said, our dad was such a huge Royals fan in the late 70s, early 80s, that he named my brother Jamie after Jamie Quirk.
How
cool
was
I wanted
that?
to share that with you.
Tell him thank you.
You just did.
Yeah.
Shout out
awesome.
to Matt. Yeah.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic.
That's a really cool story.
It is. So.
Well, anything else that you're a part of right now? Any type of business in Denver or cause that you'd like to share?
I'm just enjoying retirement. I was never sure I was going to ever retire.
Mm-hmm.
Never. You just thought that I'd going to do it forever, but the timing was right. The only thing that I do is I'm very family oriented. I've got 3 kids. I've got 4 grandkids. I see the grandkids every single day.
That's amazing. Awesome. You just dropped one off before
I dropped 2 of them
right?
off. They're 4 and 3. I dropped them off this morning at camp. It's really just they go to school. The teachers do arts and crafts, and it gives my daughter a little time out. But
gives her a break.
I drive them to school. When school start. I mean,
how fun is that though?
Oh, it's a blast,
right?
I never knew it was going to be that much fun,
right? And they have no idea how awesome Grandpa is right now. They just see Grandpa, right? They don't know and the other parts.
Well, I go over there this morning because my daughter also has a 10-month-old, so she doesn't have to put him in the car and drive him. So I will drive him, and they talk to me and they go, Grandpa, let's go to Duck Donuts. So, of course, we go to Duck Donuts,
Awesome.
That's amazing. Because you're not going to say no.
No.
Right?
Of course not.
Yeah.
And we can't tell my daughter. She gets mad.
Oh, no.
Hopefully she doesn't listen to the show.
You're getting them donuts and soda and getting them all jacked up on sugar.
Well, I can say and speak on behalf of Darren and myself that you are one of the most authentic individuals that we've ever had the pleasure to know. I got to know you at fantasy camp for the first time, and I wrote you a letter, and it was an absolute pleasure getting to know you, and it continues to go that way. You're just a great person, and we really appreciate you hanging out with us today.
Well, thanks for asking me. You guys do a great job. It's fun.
Yeah.
You know, that's the one thing people say, what is the one thing you miss about not being in baseball? And the truth is, I miss being around people to talk baseball with.
Right.
Because, I'm not around other than that's what we get to do in fantasy camp we get to talk baseball for a week. Right. Here we're talking baseball and stories.
Telling stories.
My life isn't around that group of people anymore unless I do something like this, and I love talking baseball.
Well, DC and I are going to start calling you on the weekly whenever we're talking baseball. Yeah. We're going to loop you in on the call.
Because, talking baseball with the grandkids probably isn't the same interaction as doing this. But no, man, as we respect the time here, but thank you for being so awesome. And you're always nothing but a gentleman, whether it's Royals fantasy camp or just out and about. So thank you very much for spending time with us.
You guys do a good job.
Thank you very much.
We appreciate it.
Guys, this has been the Always Be Cool podcast with Bobby and Darren, hanging out with Jamie Quirk. Find us online at where you can find your podcast at Spotify, Google, or Apple, and, of course, Instagram and Facebook at Always Be Cool Podcast. Have a great day. Mr. Jamie Quirk, everybody.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. See you later.
If you are hearing this message, you've listened to the entire episode. And for that, Darren and Bobby thank you from the bottom of their hearts.
They hope you enjoyed this new episode. And if you did, please leave them a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever else you're listening. Please share this episode with others who may be interested in our community.
Also, feel free to let DC and BK know which business or community leaders you'd like to see covered in future episodes. Get in touch in the comments or on social media. See you next time for a new episode. And remember, always be cool.
This podcast is powered by Summit Lending, NMLS number 1850081, Equal Housing Lender.